Chapter 1: Shattered Reflection. The city was a maze of shadows and neon lights. Somewhere in its tangled heart, an old apartment building loomed silently against the cold night sky. It had witnessed decades of whispered secrets and desperate lives. Tonight, it became the stage for something far more twisted. The camera, or what could have been a camera in the mind's eye, panned upward, narrowing its gaze toward a single window on the uppermost floor. The soft yellow light inside flickered like a weary heartbeat. Within the dimly lit room, Brian Marshall sat motionless, his silhouette blending into the cluttered remnants of a life shattered. Once, Brian had been a celebrated special effects artist, the magician behind Hollywood's most terrifying illusions. Now he was a broken man, his mind fractured by grief and trauma. He sat on the edge of a worn-out couch, hands trembling, his gaze locked on a wall crowded with framed photographs. The photographs were relics of a forgotten happiness. One showed Brian on a movie set, standing proudly beside a monstrous animatronic he had built. Another showed his wife, Elise, mid-laugh, her auburn hair catching the golden light of a summer day. Then there were the children, Trimes, Tanaya and Jevon, frozen in moments of joy. At the beach, on a playground in their small, cluttered living room, the same room he now occupied. His eyes lingered on one photograph in particular. It captured the family on a sunlit beach, Elise holding Trimus's hand, Brian's arm wrapped protectively around Tanaya and Jevon. Their smiles were radiant, unburdened by the dark future that lay ahead. As Brian stared, the image blurred, his vision swimming with unshed tears. All gone, he muttered, the words barely audible. A sinister chuckle echoed in his mind. Mr. B had arrived, uninvited as always. Gone, yes, but not forgotten. Isn't that why we're here, Brian? The voice was low, smooth and venomous. To make sure they're never forgotten? Brian clenched his jaw, refusing to engage. He tried to focus on his breathing, slow, measured, just as Dr. Madison had taught him, but Mr. B was relentless. Come now, the voice purred. You're holding a severed ear in one hand and a bloody ID in the other. Surely that warrants some reflection. Brian's gaze snapped downward. In his right hand he clutched a human ear, fleshy, pink, grotesquely real. Blood dripped onto the worn carpet, forming abstract patterns that seemed to writhe under the dim light. His left hand held a blood-smeared ID card. The name was unreadable, but the photograph was unmistakable. Dr. Madison. What did you do, Mr. B? His voice cracked. Oh, don't act so surprised. You know how this goes. I step in when you're too weak to do what needs to be done. She was a liar, Brian, just like all the others. She didn't care about us. None of them do. Brian staggered to his feet, pulse racing. He stumbled toward the bathroom, leaving crimson footprints in his wake. The fluorescent light buzzed angrily as he flicked it on, illuminating his reflection in the cracked mirror. His face was a ghastly mask. Blood streaked his skin, his eyes. Once warm and alive, were now hollow and haunted. He looked like a stranger, a grotesque caricature of the man he once was. This isn't real, he whispered, gripping the sink. It's just another hallucination. You're not real. Mr. B laughed, the sound echoing inside his skull like a mocking symphony. Oh, I'm very real, Brian. I'm the part of you that's been screaming to be heard for years. You can't get rid of me. You don't want to. I'm the only one who understands. Brian squeezed his eyes shut, willing the voice away. Wungiyo. Slowly the laughter faded, leaving only the harsh buzz of the overhead light. When he opened his eyes, his hands were empty. The ear and ID, gone. The blood gone. Just another episode. Get out of my head, he hissed, his voice trembling with fear and fury. The apartment fell silent once more. Brian returned to the living room, his movements slow, deliberate. He sank back onto the couch and buried his face in his hands. The next moment, he was seated in a courtroom. The transition was seamless, like slipping between dreams. One instant he was in his apartment. The next he sat under the cold gaze of Judge Jonathan Smith. The courtroom was sterile and oppressive, its walls panelled in heavy wood. Rows of spectators sat in tense silence, their eyes fixed on him. Brian's suit hung loosely on his frame, as though it belonged to someone else. He felt exposed, vulnerable, as if every hidden sin was etched across his skin for all to see. The judge cleared his throat, the sound echoing ominously through the chamber. Mr. Marshall, he intoned, his voice devoid of warmth. We are here to determine the truth. Are you prepared to face judgment? Brian's mouth was dry. He tried to speak, but no words came. His gaze flicked across the courtroom, searching for an anchor in the sea of accusatory faces. And then he heard it, that damned voice. Cut the melodrama, Mr. B snapped. They don't want to hear all this crap. Get to the point. Tell them why we're here. Brian shook his head violently, trying to dispel the intrusion. But Mr. B was insistent. Enough with the theatrics. They're bored. I'm bored. Let's get this show on the road. With sudden defiance, Brian muttered under his breath, Shut up and sit quietly in the back of the bus next to your special friend, Ed. The courtroom shimmered briefly, as though reality itself were trembling. Still, the judge remained unflinching, his eyes narrowing. Mr. Marshall? He prompted. Brian drew a deep breath. He would tell the truth, his truth, but he would do it on his own terms. I'm ready, he said at last, his voice steady despite the storm raging within. And with those words, the trial of his soul began.